The blue folder had been lying to her for 11 years. Not in the way dishonest things lie loudly with cracks showing. It had lied the way silence lies. Patiently. Waiting for the moment when the truth inside it would no longer be avoidable. When the boy who had grown into the shape of his father would finally open the second drawer of that cabinet and find what she had been standing between him and since the night Chan-woo died. That morning came on a Tuesday. Ju-chan was 18. Home from his first year of law school for the mid-semester break. Quieter than he used to be in the way that serious study makes people quiet, not closed, just deeper. He had come back with sharper eyes and a way of pausing before he spoke that was so completely Chan-woo that Maureen sometimes had to look away. She was in the kitchen when she heard the cabinet drawer. She knew the sound. She had been hearing it in her sleep for 11 years, the particular slide and resistance of the second drawer, the one she had never encouraged him toward, the one she kept meaning to clear out and never did because clearing it out meant deciding what to do with what was inside it. She put down her mug, walked to the bedroom doorway. Ju-chan was sitting cross-legged on the floor exactly the way he had at age 6. Same position, same absorption, same complete stillness. Except now his legs were longer and the folder in his hands looked smaller and his face, when he looked up, was not a child's face anymore. He held the blue-tabbed folder open. His eyes found hers. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. "How long?" he said finally. Maureen leaned against the doorframe. "Since the beginning." He looked back at the document. She watched him read it the way she had read it 100 times. The tenancy agreement, Chan-woo's name only, the clause that made everything he had built at that door at age 7 technically legally fragile. "Andrew could have known this," Ju-chan said. Not accusatory. Precise. "No." She crossed her arms. "He didn't." Ju-chan closed the folder slowly, set it on the floor beside him, pressed one hand flat on the cover the way he used to press documents against Andrew's chest, deliberate, final. "You let me stand at that door," he said. "Knowing." "Yes." "Why?" Maureen was quiet for a moment. She looked at her son. 18 years old, law school textbooks in his bag, his father's eyes asking her a question his father never got to ask. "Because you needed to believe you could," she said. "And I needed to watch you be right." The room held that. Ju-chan looked at the folder under his hand, then at his mother. "Were you scared?" "Every second." Something moved across his face. Not anger, something more complicated. The particular feeling of learning that the person who protected you was also terrified while doing it, and did it anyway. He stood up, picked up the folder, walked to her and placed it in her hands. "We don't need it anymore," he said. She looked down at it. "The house is Andrew's," Ju-chan continued. "Has been for 11 years. We've been paying rent that's kept his building loan alive. That's not fragility, Mama. That's leverage we never had to use." He paused. "But I'm going to fix the legal foundation. Properly. Before I go back." Maureen looked up at him. At the height of him now, the width of his shoulders, the jaw that was hers. "When did you become this?" she said softly. He almost smiled. "You know when." She did. She put the folder down on the cabinet top and opened her arms and he walked into them the way he always had, without embarrassment, without performance. Just her son, coming home to the place he had always fit. He called Andrew that afternoon. Andrew picked up on the second ring, which meant he had been expecting the call eventually. He always expected Ju-chan's calls eventually. "You found it," Andrew said. A pause. "You knew about the folder," Ju-chan said. "Your mother told me. 3 years after you won at the door." Andrew's voice was careful. She needed someone to know. Ju-chan absorbed that. Looked out the window of his childhood bedroom at the street he had counted. 4 meters from door to gate, at age 7. "She told you before she told me. She told me so I could watch out for both of you without you knowing why." A pause. "I reduced the rent twice, Ju-chan. That was not generosity. That was me doing the only thing I could do with what I knew." The line was quiet. "I need to amend the tenancy," Ju-chan said. "My mother's name needs to be on a formal agreement. Clean, legal, airtight." "I already had my lawyer draft it," Andrew said. 2 years ago. I was waiting for you to find the folder." Ju-chan closed his eyes briefly. "Open them. You've been waiting 2 years. I've been waiting for you to be old enough to handle it without it breaking something." Andrew paused. "Did it break anything?" Ju-chan looked toward the kitchen where Maureen was making the tea she would actually drink this time. No, he said. Good. Andrew exhaled. Come and sign it tomorrow. Bring your mother. They signed it the next morning. Maureen's name on a legal document for the first time in 11 years. Clean formal witnessed. Andrew's lawyer, a small efficient woman named Grace who clearly found Ju-chan interesting in the specific way that lawyers find other lawyers interesting, notarized it without ceremony and slid it across the table. Maureen picked up the pen. Her hand didn't shake. She signed and set the pen down and looked at her name on the paper, and said nothing for a moment that was not empty at all. Ju-chan sat beside her. He didn't touch her arm or tell her it was okay. He just sat there the way Chan-woo used to sit in difficult moments, present, steady, close enough. Andrew watched from across the table. When Maureen looked up, he gave her one small nod, the kind of nod that carries a whole sentence. She nodded back. On the drive home, Maureen sat in the passenger seat and watched the city go by and said, "Your father would have done exactly what you did this morning." Ju-chan kept his eyes on the road. I know. He would have also made a speech about it. Ju-chan's mouth moved. I know that too. Maureen laughed. It came out sudden and real, the laugh she had before Chan-woo died, the one that used to fill rooms. It had come back in pieces over the years, a little more each time, but this morning it came back whole and she let it, both hands pressed to her face, shoulders shaking. Ju-chan listened to his mother laugh and felt something settle in his chest that had been slightly unsettled since he was 5 years old. Not healed. Not erased. Settled. There is a difference. He went back to law school and did not waste a single day of it. He studied the way his father recorded closing arguments, feeling the weight of every word before using it. His professors noticed him the way good professors notice students who are not studying to pass but studying because the subject lives inside them. He was not the loudest in the room. He was the one people listened to when he finally spoke. At 22 he graduated, top of his class. Maureen flew in for the ceremony. She wore a green dress and sat in the third row, and when his name was called she stood up before anyone else did and stayed standing the entire time he walked across the stage. Both hands pressed flat on her thighs, eyes absolutely full, not making a single sound because the sound she needed to make had no shape language could hold. Ju-chan found her eyes from the stage, held them, looked away only to accept the certificate from the dean's hands. Andrew had sent flowers to their seat, a large arrangement with a card that said simply, "I knew at the door." Maureen held the card all through the ceremony and drove home with it on her lap. At 23 he took his first case alone. A young black woman named Senna whose landlord had illegally withheld her deposit and threatened eviction on fabricated grounds. The case was not glamorous. The courtroom was small. The opposing lawyer was experienced and quietly condescending in the way that experienced lawyers can be toward young ones. Ju-chan waited. Let the condescension breathe. Then dismantled the opposing argument with 4 documents and 11 minutes of the cleanest cross-examination the small courtroom had seen in years. The judge, a woman in her 60s who had seen everything, looked at him over her glasses when he finished and said nothing for a moment. Then she ruled in his client's favor. Full deposit returned. Legal costs awarded. Outside the courtroom, Senna grabbed both his hands and said, "How did you do that?" Ju-chan picked up his briefcase. "Someone taught me that being scared doesn't mean wrong," he said, "and that you should always know the distance between where you are and where danger might come from." Senna stared at him. He almost smiled. "Go home," he said. "You won." By 25 the cases were bigger. By 26 people called him before they called anyone else. By 27 Andrew called. Andrew's voice on the phone was different this time. Not the voice of the man who had stood at a gate in a simpler shirt with his hands in his pockets. Not the voice of the man who had laughed suddenly and covered his mouth at a 7-year-old's precision. This was the voice of a man standing at the edge of something he could not see the bottom of, controlled on the surface, hollow underneath. "I need you," Andrew said. "Not as the boy I know. As an attorney." Ju-chan was at his desk. 27 years old, his father's case files organized on one shelf, his own on another. He closed the document he was reading. "Tell me everything," he said. "From the beginning. Leave nothing out." Andrew told him. It took 40 minutes. When he finished, the line was quiet for a long moment. "Are you guilty?" Ju-chan asked. "No. I'm not asking what happened. I'm asking what a jury will see when they look at you." Andrew paused. "A black man with money and a complicated paper trail. Then we have work to do," Ju-chan said. Come to my office tomorrow. 7 a.m. Bring everything, every document, every transaction record, every message. If it exists, bring it. If you deleted it, tell me. Ju-chan. Andrew. His voice was quiet, pulled back inside itself the way Chan-woo's had gone quiet before the greatest argument of his life. I have never lost a case I believed in. Do you understand what I'm telling you? A pause. Yes, Andrew said. Then come at 7. The case took 4 months to prepare. Ju-chan worked it the way his father had worked the hardest case of his career, without flinching, without shortcuts, without ever allowing himself the comfort of assumption. He rebuilt Andrew's paper trail from the beginning, transaction by transaction, finding the pattern that the prosecution had deliberately misread and proving not just that Andrew was innocent, but that the misreading was not accidental. Someone had constructed the evidence against Andrew. Carefully, patiently, the way you construct something when you have time and motive and the quiet confidence that nobody will look closely enough. Ju-chan looked closely enough. 3 weeks before the trial he found it. A document buried inside a financial record from 6 years prior. A name. Connection. A thread that, once pulled, unraveled the entire prosecution's architecture in a way that could not be explained away or recontextualized. He sat at his desk at 2 in the morning staring at it. Then he picked up his phone and called Andrew. Andrew picked up immediately. He had not been sleeping either. I found it, Ju-chan said. Silence. All of it? Andrew asked. Enough. Ju-chan leaned back in his chair. Andrew, who knew about your investment portfolio in 2019? A long pause. 3 people, Andrew said slowly. My accountant. My bank manager. He stopped. And, Ju-chan said. Andrew's voice dropped. And the man who sold me your mother's house. The line went absolutely still. The original owner, Ju-chan said. Yes. Ju-chan closed his eyes for 3 seconds. Opened them. He built this case against you, Ju-chan said. Because you amended the tenancy agreement. Because you protected my mother. Because he lost leverage over that property when you stopped being the landlord he expected you to be. He paused. This was never about your finances, Mr. Andrew. It was about that house. It was about us. Andrew said nothing for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was thick. Ju-chan. Don't. Ju-chan stood up. Walked to his window. The city below was quiet and lit and indifferent. You protected my mother for 11 years. You reduced the rent. You waited 2 years with a signed document so I could find the folder myself. He pressed his hand flat against the glass. I will walk into that courtroom and I will end this. That is not a promise. It is just what is going to happen. The courtroom was full. The kind of case that filled rooms, cameras outside, journalists with opinions already formed, people who had read the headlines and decided before the evidence was read. Andrew sat at the defense table in a gray suit, older, heavier, afraid in the specific way that only people who have spent decades not being afraid can be afraid, completely and without practice. Ju-chan stood at the front, 27 years old. Hair swept back exactly as it had been at 7, deliberate, unchanged. His mother's jaw. His father's eyes. A dark suit that fit the way Chan-woo's suits had always fit, like it was not clothing but a decision. He turned to face the court. His voice did that thing. Went quiet. Pulled itself back inside. Then he began. He presented the evidence in 4 movements, the way his father had structured closing arguments on that small black recording device. First the foundation, then the contradiction, then the buried document with the name and the connection and the thread, then the dismantling clean surgical patient, the way you take apart something that was never as solid as it looked. The prosecution's lawyer, experienced, well-dressed, the kind of attorney who confused confidence with preparation, objected twice in the first hour. Both objections were overruled. By the second hour the courtroom had shifted. You could feel it, the particular atmospheric change of a room full of people revising what they thought they knew. Journalists typing faster. The judge's expression moving from neutral to focused. Andrew watched from the defense table. Watched this man who had once stood in gavel pajamas at a door pressing a document against a chest that was not his own, and felt something he had no word for in any language he spoke. The jury returned in 4 hours. Not guilty. The courtroom exhaled like a single organism. Andrew closed his eyes. 3 rows behind Maureen, in a yellow dress Chan-woo would have loved, pressed both hands flat on her thighs and looked at her son standing at the front of a room he had been preparing to stand in since he was 6 years old on a floor with a brown folder in his lap. Ju-chan turned, found her face in the crowd immediately. They looked at each other across the full gallery and the noise and the exhaling room and said nothing because nothing was needed. Every word that mattered between them had already been spoken. In a hallway, in a kitchen, in a car on the way home from a signing, in the dark beside a wooden cabinet, in the simple fact of showing up for each other every single day for 22 years without being asked. Outside the courthouse, Andrew gripped Ju-chan's hand with both of his. "Your father," he started. Stopped. His throat moved. "I know," Ju-chan said quietly. Andrew nodded, pulled him into a brief, firm embrace. The kind men give each other when words have reached their limit. Then he stepped back, composed himself, looked at Ju-chan with clear eyes. "What do you need?" Andrew said. "Anything. Name it." Ju-chan looked at him for a moment. "There's a house," he said. He had found it 3 months before the trial. Not found it by accident, searched for it the way he prepared cases. Methodically, specifically, with a list of requirements he had been building in the back of his mind since he was 7 years old, standing in a doorway promising himself that one day his mother would not have to hold a wall to keep herself upright in a hallway that wasn't legally hers. The house was in a quiet part of the city where the streets were wide and the gardens were real, and the light came through the windows in the morning like it had somewhere important to be. For bedrooms, a kitchen with a wooden counter that reminded him of the one he had sat across from his mother at as a child, except larger, brighter, without the weight of survival pressing down on every surface. A garden. Maureen had always wanted a garden. She had never said it out loud, but he had watched her, over the years, pause at other people's gardens the way you pause at something you have given up wanting. A half-second of stillness, then moving on. He had noticed every time. He bought the house on a Thursday morning, paid in full, drove to the house they had rented from Andrew for 22 years, and knocked on the door of the home he had defended at age 7 in gavel pajamas and bare feet. Maureen opened the door. She looked at his face and immediately said, "What did you do?" "Get your coat," he said. "Ju-chan." "Mama." He held out his hand. "Get your coat." She was silent the entire drive. She watched the city change around them. The streets widening, the trees thickening, the quality of the light shifting the way it does when you move from survival into something else. When he parked outside the house, she looked at it through the passenger window for a long time without speaking. It was a beautiful house. Not ostentatious. Chan-woo had not been an ostentatious man and his son was not either. But beautiful in the way that careful, loving choices produce beauty. The garden was full of color. The windows were wide. The front door was painted a deep warm red that somehow, against all logic, looked like it had been chosen specifically for her. "Ju-chan," she said. Her voice was barely there. He reached into his jacket pocket and placed a key in her hand. She looked down at it. "It's yours," he said. "Paid. Fully. Your name. Only yours." Maureen closed her fingers around the key. Her shoulders came up and then dropped entirely. The full release of a woman setting down something she had been carrying so long she had forgotten she was carrying it. A sound came out of her that was not quite crying and not quite not. The sound of relief arriving after it had been held at the door for 22 years. Ju-chan sat beside her and said nothing. Let her have every second of it. When she finally looked up, her eyes were full, but her face was the face of a woman who had arrived somewhere. Not just at a house. Somewhere inside herself that grief had blocked the path to for a very long time. "Your father," she said. "I know," Ju-chan said. "He would have." "I know, Mama." She laughed through the tears, pressed the key against her chest, looked back at the house with its red door and its garden full of color. "Can I go inside?" she said. "It's your house," he said. "You don't have to ask." He married at 28. Her name was Yuna, second-generation Korean American, a civil rights attorney with a mind like a blade, and a laugh that arrived without warning and filled every room it entered. She had argued against Ju-chan in a housing rights case at 26, lost, but made him work for it in a way that no opposing attorney had before or since. He had called her 3 days after the verdict. Not about the case. She had known exactly why he was calling. "You have terrible timing," she said. "I've been told," he said. "I'm still annoyed about the Patel case." "I know. You exploited a procedural gap that I should have closed." "Yes." A pause. Dinner Thursday, she said. You're paying. I know that too, he said. The wedding was small and exactly right. A garden ceremony. Maureen had insisted on a garden and nobody argued with her about anything ever. Yuna in a dress that was neither traditional Korean nor traditional anything else but entirely herself. Ju-chan in a dark suit, hair swept back, his father's eyes clear and present. Andrew sat in the front row beside Maureen. He had worn his best suit and cried twice before the ceremony even started, which he denied completely when Maureen raised an eyebrow at him. When the officiant asked if anyone had words, Maureen stood. She did not have a speech prepared. She had told Ju-chan she wouldn't speak. But she stood anyway, in her garden, in the home her son had bought her, in the life that had been rebuilt from a doorstep and a highlighted clause and a 7-year-old in gavel pajamas who had decided that scare didn't mean wrong. She looked at her son. Your father picked out those pajamas, she said. The ones with the gavels. He bought them 6 months before he died. He said. Her voice caught. Released. He said, this boy is going to need a uniform. She pressed her hand against her chest. He was right. He was always right. And so were you. Every single time. The garden was completely still. Ju-chan looked at his mother and felt his father in the air between them. Not as grief, not as absence, but as presence. The kind of presence that doesn't require a body. That lives in the way a son holds a pen, and reads a document, and stands at a door and refuses to move. He mouthed 2 words at her. I know. She sat down. Yuna slipped her hand into his without looking at him, which meant she had been watching and understood everything and loved him, including all the parts of him that were still 7 years old at a doorway in the dark. He held her hand. The officiant continued. The garden was full of color. The red door of the house stood open behind them all. And somewhere in the warm bright air of that afternoon, in the way the light fell across a mother's face and a son's steady hands and a new beginning that had been 28 years in the making, Chanwoo was entirely, completely, permanently present. The end. You just watched a boy become a man. You just watched a mother's sacrifice become a garden. You just watched a name Ju-chan carry 2 worlds and refused to drop either one. This story was brought to you by Black Silk Stories, where Afro-Korean lives are told with the love, depth, and fire they have always deserved. If this story moved you, share it. If it reminded you of someone, tell them. If you stayed until the end, you already know why. Subscribe, comment, stay close, because the next story is already waiting. Black Silk Stories.